remember last week we talked about keywords or key phrases. This is where some of that comes in. And one of the reasons search engine marketing is so coveted, it is something that people really, really enjoy, is that when people search, as a marketer, is perhaps the only time when I absolutely know your intention. I know exactly what you are thinking and what you want at that moment in time. It's probably the only time. So when you type in a keyword, or you type in a search phrase or a search question, I, as a marketer, know exactly what it is you want to know at that very moment. And so that's why it's so powerful to a lot of marketers, because it is the one time where your intention as a seeker is very, very, as a searcher, is very well understood. And so when that happens, we want to capitalize on that moment and present you with our opportunity, our products or services, and make sure that you click on it so that you can come to our website or download our content or ebooks or any of those lead magnets to fulfill or answer the question or the keywords that you put in there. So really, let's keep going. I'm going to talk a little bit about some key concepts with Google Ads. Hold on one second. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. I feel like I missed a page here. So let me just, what's going on here? Okay. Nope. I guess it's all good. Yes, I have something in the wrong order. My bad. So let me go and do this now. That's what happens when you're moving presentations around a lot of times. So let me just reshare this. So let's talk about some other key concepts. So the first concept is impressions. You may hear this term a lot. And impressions are how many people have been exposed to or have seen your ads. So it doesn't mean that they've clicked on it, but just how many people has your ad sort of passed by their eyeballs. It has been in their stream, it has been in their feed. When they typed a search, it came up. They don't have to engage with it. It just has to be shown to them. And so impressions, you will often hear in marketing, people talk about impressions. An ad, how many impressions does it have? There is sort of something that often you might pay for, and it's called, you will pay a CPM rate, which means you pay per thousand, which is the sort of the Latin mille impressions. So how much do you pay for every 1,000 impressions that gets shown? And generally, this is a sort of, you would pay this if you're trying to get brand awareness. So people haven't clicked on it, you just want them to see your ad and maybe make them aware. So often if you're doing an awareness ad, you might choose to pay for your ads on a cost per 1,000 impressions. Click-through rate is literally when people click on your ad, how much, when they click on it, divided by how many impressions. So if there were 1,000 impressions and it got 10 clicks, that would be considered a 1% click-through rate, because it would be 10 clicks divided by 1,000, which would be 1%. So click-through rates are there. One of the questions I often get asked are, what's a good click-through rate? At the end of today's presentation, I have some averages by industry for click-through rates and some of these other things. So I'm just going to hold off for now. But if you have that question, scroll down to the end and you can maybe go ahead and see what some of the rates are there. Cost per click is how much you as a company or as an advertiser pay when someone clicks your ad. So when you basically tell Google that you will pay for every click, if somebody sees your ad and it's just an impression and they do not click on it, you don't get charged. You only get charged when people actually click on your ad. And so that's what we call the cost per click. So CPC in marketing. So that is how much do you pay every time somebody clicks on your ad. Conversions are literally when people or visitors perform a desired action and usually that's making a purchase, but that could be downloading an ebook, that could be giving you their email address, signing up for your newsletter. So depending on what it is you're advertising in your ad, when they click on it, do they actually perform the desired action that you want once after they've clicked on the ad? And that's what we consider a conversion. So conversions will vary depending on what it is you're advertising or what you want them to do. Conversion rates are basically how many conversions do you get divided by the number of clicks that you have. So really conversions are figured out based on how many people clicked on my ad, how many people did I bring to my property? And then from that pool of people who clicked on it, who came to my website, for example, what percentage of those people did I actually convert to that desired action? And then finally, cost per action is sort of a term, sometimes it's referred to as cost per acquisition in marketing, but it really is, it measures how much your organization pays in order to get a conversion, right? So not just to get a click. So click is one step, and then the conversion is the next step. So how much does it cost to go, how much are you spending basically to get someone from seeing the ad, clicking the ad, and converting, and how much does that costing you sort of in total? And so often these are the things that you will see, you'll hear. Basically what you'll see is that you'll see a lot of these terms in Google ads. You'll see a lot of these terms, LinkedIn ads, Twitter ads, like basically any kind of promoted post. And I just want to make sure we have the right vocabulary before we start going down this rabbit hole of paid advertising. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, none so far, so I'll keep going. So tonight I want to talk about Google Ads first. So Google advertisements are basically the sponsor ads that show up when you do a search, and they show up above the sort of organic, the links that show up because the content on their website is really is a good match. And there are a couple of key concepts around Google Ads that I think visually would be helpful to explain. So in Google Ads, you can create campaigns. And for marketers, we all understand campaigns. So a campaign, I might be doing a campaign where I'm promoting product X, right? And so I'm going to be doing a product X campaign. And then I set a budget at the campaign level there. I set the budget. So that's something to keep in mind there. And then under that campaign level, you have the option of creating different what we call ad groups. And ad groups are literally areas where you define, remember last week, those keywords. So these are going to be the keywords that when that keyword gets typed in, or key phrases, or a question, when that happens, basically it's going to show your ad. And so what's interesting is you can have in one campaign, you can have multiple ad groups, but within each ad group, the keywords have to be unique. And an example that I often like to use is, for example, let's say you were selling cameras and you wanted to have different brands of cameras. And so you were doing a camera campaign, and one group of ads was going to be Panasonic, one was going to be Fujifilm, and one was going to be GoPro. So each one of those ad groups, like GoPro might be 3, let's say Fujifilm is 2, and Panasonic would be group number 1, or Nikon would be group number 1, Canon or Nikon. And then you would have keywords that are unique to those particular brands, right? So that's something to keep in mind around that. And oopsie. Okay, and then basically what we have here is we have what we have here is in ad group 1, as I said, you then can have multiple ads. And this is really great if you're trying to do some A/B testing, right? You're trying to do some A/B testing and you want to have different words, different calls to actions, different unique unique selling propositions. So you're kind of testing, A/B testing, right? So for that ad group, let's say this is Nikon, I want to have 3 different, in this case, ads. It doesn't have to be 3. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 10. You decide. And then you can play with the words and see which ad performs best, right? For Nikon. You can then repeat this for your second group, which we had said was Fujifilms. And these would be separate ads that all speak to your Fujifilm cameras. And then you would test that. Group 3 would be for all of your GoPro cameras. And so then you would have ads that were only speaking to the GoPro audiences. And so you would have keywords for GoPro, and then you would have ads that map to that. And all of this is under a campaign budget. And the reason we put it all under one campaign budget is because basically if my budget is $2,000, if my GoPro is going really well, it might eat up more of my budget than my Nikon one, but you can split that and it can seamlessly be used by any of those 3 groups. Now, if you want to have a second campaign, you could set it for a second budget. But if you don't use up all the money in campaign number 2, it just sits there unused. So one of the reasons a lot of people want to have sort of things under one campaign or one budget is so that they have a little bit more flexibility with how the money gets spent. And depending on what's performing well, Google will automatically sort of, take from that one bucket and just figure out where it needs to happen. But you could have a second campaign. Let's say that this was VR headsets, virtual reality headsets for my campaign number 2. So the first one was cameras and the second one is VR headsets. And similarly, you could then have 2 different ad groups. One could be Vive, one could be Oculus, and you basically would have keywords specific to those brands. And then underneath those, you would have ads. And again, you could have 1, you could have 2, you could have as many as you need. But these are sort of words that you will start seeing. And it's a visual is really good because Google will ask you almost an Excel spreadsheet, what's your campaign name? What's your ad group name? What's your ad name, right? And so I just wanted to make this very clear where they live and what they belong to. So now that we've talked about Google Ads and key concepts, what kind of ads does Google actually offer you? So with Google, you have search ads, which are the ads when you type in a keyword that you search. Display ads are banner ads that run across all kinds of Google properties. And those display ads can be on other websites. They literally are generally like visual banner ads with images. Shopping ads are a new thing, shopping campaigns, not new, but relatively new. So when you do a Google search, you may notice that one of the options there, they have news and they have video. They actually now have a shopping one where you can get pictures of items and it'll show you people who are selling those products. So it's for products only, not for services, but you can promote your products with these shopping ads. There are video ads, which primarily go into their YouTube and other video channels. So those are ads that show up in videos. And then universal app ads. So these are ads to get people to download to download an app that you have, an iOS or an Android app. And so this is really driving app install. So if you're building an app, you want to do some universal app ads as well. So these are the sort of the main criteria of types of Google ads. Google also offers local campaigns where it basically, if you were a plumber and you wanted to do a local thing around a physical store or venue, then you can have a local ad as well. And these are basically going to be, you will see those in search. They can be display, they could be in Google Maps, because with local, you have this sort of geographic piece as well as YouTube based on location. And then finally, Google has something called smart campaigns, which is Google saying, hey, we're going to make it easy for you. You tell us what your goals are. We'll figure out the best place to place your ads. And you just give us your budgets and things like that. It's a great way to get started. And it's, Google does try to optimize it. I do find though, if you have a small budget, you're better off using your very small budget. If you only want to spend $10 or $15, you might want to take the time to figure out where you want to spend your money, because smart campaigns can eat up that $15 literally within minutes. And so that works a little bit better if you have, I would say, probably over $100 budget. But if you're just trying to test something, you might want to just do things manually. And I'm going to give you some tips around that as well. Are display ads shown on websites not owned by Google? Yes, basically, Google, if you've ever owned a website and you just sort of have, and you agree to show ads, banner ads on your website, when you sign up as a publisher, as a website publisher, Google will ask you, what are some of the keywords? What are the topics? What industry do you fall under? So then Google will say, oh, okay, Rochelle's website is a website all around digital marketing. So when somebody decides to run a banner ad and they say, we want our banner ad to run on websites that talk about digital marketing, then that ad would show up on my website because I've put in the code, the Google AdSense code, to pull in advertisements from Google that talk about digital marketing. So that's basically where display ads are. So display ads will show up across what they call the Google network. So if you've ever said, yes, I am willing to show banner ads on my website, you are part of the Google network. And based on how you have classified your website, that tells Google what category what category of ads they should place on your website. So there you go. One of the big things around Google is what they call a quality score. So quality score is a really big part of your paid advertising. And a quality score is basically how relevant is the ad that you create, that you write, relative to how relevant is it to the keyword that gets typed in. So if I type in digital marketing, then I want to see ads that actually speak to digital marketing. And so quality score is looking at the relevance of your ad relative to the keyword that someone typed in, or keywords or key phrases. Wherever I say keyword, it could be a key phrase as well. It looks at historically when people have typed in that keyword or those keywords or key phrases, how many of them have clicked on your ad? So what is the expected click-through rate? Have they clicked on it a lot? If they click on it a lot, Google goes, oh, this ad really speaks to that search word. And so what is that expected click-through rate? So Google, the more people click on your ad, the more your ad gets shown. And then the third thing is the landing page experience. Last week, we talked about landing pages. So this is why it's really important that you have the keywords on your landing page. If the keyword is in the ad, so I type in digital marketing, my ad has digital marketing, my landing page also needs to have digital marketing on that landing page as well. And the more it speaks to things around digital marketing, the stronger my landing page experience is. And so if you have the word in the ad and you have it and it matches a keyword, but it's nowhere on your landing page, your quality score will drop. And so the quality score is basically Google looking at all three of these things together to come up with a score of how good is this ad and how well does this ad match what people are looking for and what they're searching for. The quality score is literally the intersection of all three of these pieces. So just keep that in mind around your quality score. So quality score, the higher the relevance, the higher the click-through rate, the more your landing page talks about that particular concept, the better, the higher your quality score will be. And in terms of where your ad ranks, like is it the number 1 on the list or is it number 10? Your ad rank is now your maximum keyword bid times your quality score. So we talked about what quality score is. Now let's get into keyword bidding, which is a lot of art and some science, but there's also a lot of art to it as well. So let me delve into that. Your keyword bid is basically the maximum bid price that you are willing to pay for a specific keyword or key phrases. So it's what that you are willing to pay up to that price. But what you actually pay depends on your competitors and what do they bid. So here's an example. If I was going to pay $2 for a keyword or key phrase, I said, I'm willing to pay up to $2 for this keyword, digital marketing, okay? But the next highest bidder of all the people who are bidding for digital marketing said the maximum they were willing to pay is $1.50. I actually only have to pay $1.51, 1 cent more than the number 2 bidder, because that's what I need to win the bid, right? So it's like an auction. Even though I was willing to pay $2, I only needed to pay $1.51 to win the auction and to be the highest bidder. So just keep this in mind that when you set the price, what you set your price to be may not be actually what you pay. You may actually pay less than your maximum bid. But what you're telling Google is if the bidding goes up and up and up and they get to $2 and somebody bids $2.01, they've outbid me and I've now lost my position as being the potentially highest bidder. Now, $2.01 may be the bidder and the highest bidder. So then I would come in at number 2 with $2, right? So just keep that in mind that the bidding that you do with keyword strategies is the maximum you are willing to pay, okay, for that particular keyword. And again, I have some bidding amounts that I have in the presentation later on as to what's happening. How do you know how much your competitors bid? You don't know how much your competitors bid. Great question. What you do see is after you've bid, Google will give you in your analytics, will give you information as to sort of where you were ranking relative to your bidders. So relative to other bidders. So it won't tell you the exact number, but it will give you information in your results saying, you know, your ad was number 4. So you know that there were 3 other parties that outbid you, or maybe their quality score was higher. So it could be any one of those things. So often I'm going to get to some tips around bidding, but it will, if you are number 10, then probably it's a combination of a really low bid and perhaps a fairly low quality score. So great question. So then the next question is that I often get. So here's some questions. Should I bid on broad or specific keywords or key phrases? So often, do I do something like digital marketing, or do I do something like B2B digital marketing, or do I do B2B digital marketing for aerospace, right? So I now have B2B digital marketing and aerospace. So I bid on 4 words. You know, how specific should I be, right? So there are obviously trade-offs to bidding on different keywords. And really broad keywords like digital marketing are going to bring you a lot of traffic, because there are a lot of people who do searches on just digital marketing, the general terms, right? That said, a lot of your competitors were also going to want that keyword because it's big, there's a lot of traffic, and it probably applies to a lot more websites than just yours, right? So generally, it's more competitive, and because of that, it's going to cost you more money because more people want to basically get the traffic of people who type that word in. The other thing, though, on the downside is when people come to your website, if they're just looking for digital marketing and you are selling, for example, B2B digital marketing, so very specific digital marketing, there may be some people who come to your website who were looking for B2C digital marketing. And because they just typed in digital marketing, it's not a good match. So they're less qualified leads. So generally, while broad keywords and bigger, sort of more generic terms will bring you more traffic, those leads will generally be a little bit less qualified. And what we see is that the conversion rate, so people who actually purchase or perform your desired actions, will go down because you're getting more people, but they're more general people, and not everyone is perhaps looking for exactly what it is you have to offer. So one of the things to keep in mind there is, again, you want to think about you want the traffic, but you want to make sure that you're not spending too much money getting the traffic, because that can also be very expensive if people aren't converting. Because remember, if they click on it, you get charged, regardless of whether they convert or not. So you want to make sure that when they click on it, there's a good probability that they will convert. Quick question: when Google skip the dishes, usually DoorDash will pop up first as a paid ad, even before the skip homepage. Is this related to keyword bidding? So there is an issue around bidding for your competitors' brands. Generally, Google will not allow you to do that. However, if Skip the Dish or if DoorDash has a ad that says something like food delivery, in a short period of time, and people are typing food delivery, often then that will show up as well. But generally, Google doesn't like competitors to bid for other brands' names. But if you create an ad that is compelling, and so here's what often will happen is if DoorDash actually has an ad that people like and that converts more over time, if people click on that more, it'll start moving to the top, even if Skip the Dishes is the number 2 ad. If people are clicking more on the DoorDash one, then that becomes the one from the quality score that Google will show first. So part of it is historical data and behaviors from people who typed in that keyword earlier on. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see, is there another question here? Can you see what people have historically paid for certain words or phrases? So what you can see are in Google, sort of some of the keyword planning and other things. You will see some ideas around ranges. Often they will give you ranges of what people have paid in the past. Last week we talked a little bit about that, Martin, and so you can get an idea as to either how competitive, how many searches are done on that keyword, and roughly a range of what people have paid in the past. Not a specific number, but at least you can maybe start with a range and get a better sense of that. More specific keywords. So more specific keywords, what we often call long tail key phrases, will deliver better qualified leads. So basically, the more words someone types in, the more they match what you have to offer, right? So that's a really good lead. But how many times do we think of yourself? How many times do you type like 5 different keywords that are very specific, right? There are going to be fewer people in general who search on all of those words. So they often produce fewer, like the amount of leads, the number of leads is going to be lower. But the leads that they do produce usually convert much more and you have a higher conversion rate. So this is where the trade-off happens. Broad will give you lots of traffic, lower conversion. More specific will give you fewer or sort of a smaller or less traffic, but maybe a higher conversion. So ideally, when you're bidding on your keywords, you want to have a combination of both. You want to get you want to get some of that traffic. So people come to your website because maybe that's exactly what they're looking for. We were lazy and I just typed in a couple of words and then I'm just going to go and you're giving me exactly what I was looking for. So you want to do some broad keywords, which will increase your bidding prices and that'll your advertising budget. But you also want to have some of those really, really niche, specific keywords to make sure that you capture anyone who types in that, because even if it's if it's 3 people that do that search this month and it's exactly what you are selling, you want to connect to them and you want to get in front of them and make sure that they see your website, your offering, right? So definitely it's a little bit of both and it's kind of finding the right balance there. And a lot of that's going to be trial and error. And so we're going to talk about that. Again, how much should I bid on keywords? Often a question I get. Do I know those prices? You know, the ranges. Here it's sort of, again, the MBA answer, as I like to say, that depends. When keyword phrases or keywords are highly competitive, you can sometimes end up spending as much as 2 to 3 times what the suggested bids are. And so there might be a suggested bid of $2, and that's just what they suggest. Also, remember that suggested bids are usually based on historical information. So if something has changed this week, maybe that price gets bid up. So it's just a suggestion based on past experiences. I generally recommend that when you start this process, don't lose your budget trying to bid really high. I generally find for competitive things, start bidding maybe 10 to 25% and see what the results look like. You'll get a pretty good feel based on your results, whether people are seeing your ads or not. But there's no point, doing really going really, really high, because if you go high and people go higher, you guys are just basically up bidding. You're sort of pricing each other out of the market. And so, be conservative when it comes to it. Yes. So Terry, to your question, yes, I would definitely recommend having a long phrase keyword ad group and maybe a second, more general one. Absolutely. Yes, that would be a really good strategy. So great question. For more specific keywords and long tail phrases, I often start with the suggested bid price because, again, usually there are fewer queries, fewer searches every month for those. And now sometimes even those long tail key phrases can be very competitive. So look at actually how competitive it is as well, whether it's low or high or medium in terms of the competition. And in Google Keywords, they will tell you. And then slowly work your way up from there. I find that you can, maybe for an extra 2 or 3 cents, you can actually get a lot of value. But no need saying I'm going to bid 5 cents more if you don't have to, right? And so really work your way up and try to feel things out. This is why you have to look at your results. You have to see how things are going. And you can literally, on any given day, move it up another penny, bring it down another penny, and see how that impacts your results. So again, ideally, I would say, you want to bid on a combination of both those sort of general highly competitive key phrases. Again, those highly competitive ones are competitive because they bring in a lot of traffic. And you may be able to convert some of that. So that would be awesome. And then for the ones that are really focused, you definitely want to increase your chances of converting those leads because they are most closely matched to your products and services. Great. Now, one of the things that I just want to highlight, I'm just going to briefly mention, is that there are different kinds of keyword matches. Generally for Google Ads, the broad keyword match is what is by default what they have, and it matches sort of very broad similarities. So if you said, I'm going to basically bid on formal shoes, for a broad keyword, that would also be formal footwear, evening footwear, men's dress wingtips. Google's really smart. And so you don't have to think of all the different variations. As you go down to exact keyword matches, it has to match exactly those keywords in the order you have them. And so that's just something to keep in mind. You have that option, but generally, I would say if you're starting out, stick to broad, see how things go, because as you get smaller, obviously, the number of matches reduces. But on the flip side, if someone types in something that is an exact match and it's what you are offering, there's a really good chance of likelihood that that can happen there. Yes, Daniel, the recording will be available afterwards on New Ventures BC's YouTube. So yes, you can have that as well. And the presentation, Liz, if I could just have you put that in chat, that'd be great. There is a wonderful calculator that I've put as a resource here called ProSAD, and it determines optimal bids in search engine advertising. So you can basically talk about a profit level that you want, number of searches, conversion rate. So I want my conversion rate to be at this level. I want to rank number 1. I want to be the top ad, give some cost per clicks that you're willing to spend, a click-through rate. And when you do all of these, add these variables, it'll then talk to you about, give you sort of some ideas of what would be a good number to do if you want to be 1 to 10. So I would play around with some of these inputs, and you'll see some interesting results in terms of something that you might want to play around with before you're doing your bidding strategy to see how it impacts higher bids versus lower bids. Then Google text ads. I just wanted to briefly talk about some elements around the ads and what they are, because they have been changing and not everyone knows the latest things. So really, there are sort of the top line that you often see in ads are sort of, there are 3 headlines. Each one of these headlines has 30 characters that you can use. So they have the bar in between them. So again, you want to use usually your best keywords in those headlines, and usually in your first headline, make sure you have the keyword in your first headline number 1 here in the example that's given, headline 2 and headline 3. So you have 3 opportunities to put something in. Then there's what we call the display URL. So this is what people will see. And the display URL, the first part is your account website that you can't change that. So you can't make that something that doesn't work. So it is tied to your Google Ads account. But what a lot of people forget is that actually these things after the slash, you have 2 paths and you have 15 characters in each path. And those words do not have to be the same words that of the web page URL where people are going. So the destination URL where people will land may not look like divorce underscore lawyer / Vancouver, but use those keywords in those paths just as a display and make sure that they match your keywords. Basically, Google says, tell us where it's going, but then they have this display URL, which is kind of like an alias. And so that alias, use that alias to match a lot of those keywords, right? So little tip there. Then we have sort of descriptions. So you have a description, you have 2 description lines. Often people may or may not use them. You have 90 characters for each one of those. And again, think about what is a call to action? What is it that you are offering? What are your benefits? Not just features. Why would I, as a customer, want to click on your ad? Why is it, what are you offering me? What will I get? What's in it for me? So that's such that I'm willing to click on it. And then there are some things that we call here underneath sort of ad extensions. And ad extensions are either deep links to specific pages. It could be a telephone number so that people could immediately call you if you were doing something there. So there are these ad extensions that make it even easier for people to connect with you or connect very specifically within your website. And that's all, these are all part of your Google text ads. So when you think about that, of these 4, so basically, which one looks best? So what's interesting is the one that's on top obviously is performing the best. So by default, the one that you see on top historically is performing the best against, so Google will literally show them usually top to bottom based on what they think you are gonna, what people historically have done. quality score, landing page experience. And so there are a lot of things here that you would say. The one thing I do like is, for example, Burnaby divorce lawyers, 45 plus years experience. This is great. I love the headline, but literally they should have used up a lot more of their description space to give me what is it that, like, what are the benefits to me, a little bit more verbiage. You have the space, use it up. They have done really well. Divorce lawyers, they've used that in their path. They have a call. But this one, for example, has family law, divorce law, a lot more different options. So maybe people are saying, oh, well, yeah, I need a divorce lawyer, but I also need, real estate, or I'm going to be splitting, some other things. So maybe I'm going to go there because I can get other legal opinions done. So, and the ad extensions allow you to also pick and go specifically to a page. So the fact that the Burnaby divorce lawyers, they have their telephone number here, which is good, but that they don't have deep links into their website to maybe a specific page about their divorce lawyer services, like a landing page, is where they're going to lose out a bit. So something to keep in mind here as well. Hopefully that gives you some people do it themselves, so Megan, and some people can hire others to do it. I often recommend giving it a try yourself, because I think you will learn a lot as well in that process. So I think sometimes that's something to keep in mind. But if you're just like, oh, I just want someone else to do it, the problem with getting someone else to do it is they don't know your business like you do. They don't know your customers necessarily like you do. So what is it your customers are looking for? What are the words they use? What is the vocabulary they use? If your sort of ad person doesn't know that, you're going to have to teach them. And if you're teaching them, well, why don't you just do it yourself? And so here I have actually all of the maximum characters. So the path, once again, there are 2 of them. So there's path 1 and path 2, and they're 15 characters each. So something to keep in mind there. Now, let me get to LinkedIn ads. And I always feel like LinkedIn ads, they're the stepchildren around advertisers, because everybody thinks about Facebook ads, they think about Twitter, but LinkedIn has some amazing things specifically for the B2B site. So I want to talk tonight about some amazing opportunities in LinkedIn that if you are targeting other businesses and decision makers and business decision makers, LinkedIn is great. So the first thing, let's talk about costs. LinkedIn ads are going to be a little bit more expensive than perhaps what you might find on Facebook, but their conversion rates tend to be higher. So people tend to convert more. You tend to get better leads, better qualified leads, if you can find your audience there. Now, they do have a few minimums. So the minimums is that you have to spend $10 per day per campaign, a minimum of $10, and you have to have a total. So it could be $10 total and daily. I'll talk about sponsored content, but there is a little bit of a difference there. And you have to do a minimum $2 bid for any cost per click or cost per impression text ad campaigns. So those are the minimums for LinkedIn. So I just wanted to highlight that so that that's what it takes. On Facebook, you can have CPCs of 45 cents and 25 cents. But if you are looking for a purchase manager, or you're looking for someone, a CFO or a COO or a VP or a director of marketing, this is where you're going to find them. And we know that because we know their titles, we know their resumes, we know what their work experience has been. They do have a minimum bid on sponsored content, but I'm going to talk about that in a bit. It depends on the audience, the size of the audience that you are targeting. So depending on your audience, there are different minimum bids. And your audience is basically who is it you're trying to connect with. So let's talk about LinkedIn targeting just briefly, what you can do. So you can actually target people by company, company size, company revenue. You can target them by experience, companies they've worked at in the past, education levels, degrees they have, interests, groups they're part of. So there's a lot in LinkedIn that I can really specify the person I'm going after. And so in my first webinar, we talked about building that customer persona. This is why it's so important, because in the customer persona, now we know exactly, we are targeting, a CFO, we're targeting a director of marketing, whatever it is, with these kinds of experiences, and companies with this size or number of employees, this size of revenue. So that's really where all of that pays off, all that research, because now you can actually find them on LinkedIn and start targeting and start advertising to them. So what does LinkedIn have? LinkedIn has, I think I'm talking about 5 or 6 here, but so sponsored content, sponsored messaging, which is called often in-mail and conversation ads. And I'm going to go into each one of these in a second. Video ads, text ads. Text ads are very similar to Google text ads. as well as dynamic ads. So these are sort of the major 5 types of ads that you'll see on LinkedIn advertising. And I'm also going to talk about Elevate, which is not really technically an ad, but I think might be something that's good for your toolkit for companies to leverage LinkedIn. So sponsored content is would I only use LinkedIn ads for hiring? No, I'm going to show you, Terry, some really cool options that I think are really compelling. And if you have those lead magnets that we talked about in our second webinar, use LinkedIn to get people to come to those lead magnets, get that educational piece, get that ROI calculator, get that market research. That's how I would use LinkedIn to basically engage people with content that you're putting out there. So sponsored content is essentially promoted posts. So it's like a promoted post. It's like a post that is promoted. It gets in people's feeds, and it has promoted in the feed. So that's how you know it's a paid post. And there are 3 types. You can have an image, you can have a carousel, or you can have a video. So that post could be a carousel, meaning lots of a sort of a gallery of images that you go through, so like you click on it and it goes through different things. So those are your options for sponsored content. Basically, it's a post that you create that then gets promoted and put into specific people's feeds. So you tell them which people you want them to see that post. And again, it could be by any of those things that we talked about before that you want to target them. In-mail and conversation ads. So what's great is we all know that now with CASL, Canadian anti-spam legislation, it's becoming harder to just send emails to people we haven't been in touch with. You can actually use LinkedIn's email system to send targeted sort of in-mail messages to people in LinkedIn within the LinkedIn service. So you can, I'm going to say, not spam them, but you can cold call them within LinkedIn without ever getting their email, without doing any of that. But you can pay to basically be put in their inboxes so that they actually get a message from you. And so these are either put into your inbox, or they literally could be a message, what they call a conversation ad. So somebody gets a message from you. And again, you pay for this depending on your target audiences, but these are really nice because they can be much more direct. They also can be personalized. So it can be like, hey, Rochelle, you can have some wonderful things that get replaced. So it really, you can say, hey, Rochelle, I saw in your company, Rochelle Grayson Consulting, that you did. And so you can do some personalization and really sort of approach people in that way. So keep in mind one thing, though, is that LinkedIn users can opt out of receiving these. Most people don't. I'm sure you don't even know how to. Most of us haven't, but there is the option. So use this judiciously and be careful about it, because you don't want to be known as a spammer on LinkedIn, but it is a really great way to get your message directly into someone's inbox on LinkedIn. Video ads are traditional video ads. So you can do a video post, which is just a post about something that's a video, but these would be your more traditional ads. Maybe there's a call to action in there. So video ads, again, are going to be put in someone's feed. So they're more of a traditional advertising video ad that you might create around that. Does LinkedIn have any limit for sending in-mail? Or we can send direct messages, as many as we want. So for the in-mail pieces, basically you are paying for the delivery. So you pay per message. So that's where you pay for those. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a limit, but the more you send, the more expensive your ad campaign costs. So you don't want to send like 1,000 messages to everybody, but if you want to send 1,000 messages to every CFO that works for a plumbing company on LinkedIn, and there are 1,000 of them, LinkedIn will allow you to do that. Right. So part of it is what's your budget, and and how many people do you want to reach, and how targeted is that? The text ads are basically simple, just like Google. They are text ads with a heading and a description, and usually a little bit of an icon or a picture on that. And again, you can do pay per click or cost per impressions, depending on how you want to spend your budget. So these are fine, but I almost use these only to complement some of the other things I'm talking about. I would not use text ad as my first LinkedIn ad choice. They're a little bit blah. I think they're okay, but if you're just trying to do awareness and complement some other things that you're doing, it's a great way to have sort of different ways for people to see your name and things like that. InMail is in the same advertised section in LinkedIn. I've not noticed it so far. No, InMail is like in your messages. So if you go into your messages where people have sent you a direct mail, there will be something often in InMail that is sponsored. So that's something to keep in mind. How narrowly can you geo-target on LinkedIn? You can geo-target, you can say Vancouver. And I don't know if you can do postal codes. I haven't done that recently. I haven't done anything quite that specific, but I definitely have done, the city of something. So it can be pretty narrow, greater Vancouver, things like that. Are there limits on video length for video ads? I don't know, but what I do know, Jocelyn, is that basically I will recommend don't ever do a video ad that's longer than a minute because most people aren't going to watch it. So I don't know if LinkedIn has that or not, but what we found is that pretty much after about 30 seconds, if it's not compelling, people will just scroll up and just stop watching. So you have to grab them. So a minute would be really long, probably 30 seconds, like a regular video ad would be the more appropriate thing to do. So keep that in mind. The next thing I want to highlight are dynamic ads. So dynamic ads, these are really exciting. Dynamic ads allow you to literally take the profile picture from my LinkedIn profile and merge it with something of yours. Maybe it's your company page and say things like, hey, check out this wonderful thing that's happening on Rochelle Grayson consulting page. And so you can actually create these dynamic ads that basically bring information from every individual's profile, pulls it up so they see themselves, and then you can connect it with a call to action to something that you think is really important and exciting. So these are super personalized, and basically it's based on your profile, and you can start connecting it to either a job if you want looking for job applicants. You can connect it to a company page if you want them to go to your company page and read something. It could even be connected to a lead magnet that you have on your web page where you really want them to go and download that ebook. So this is really exciting, and I think this is really good. So again, something to consider: dynamic ads. Elevate isn't an ad per se, but it is a service that you have to pay for, but it allows you to find content on LinkedIn and recommend it to your employees to then post on LinkedIn as sort of advocates of your company and your brand. So, so if you wanted to get your employees to start posting things on LinkedIn about your company or about things that are interesting, and be part of your brand sort of ambassadors and evangelists and advocates, Elevate may be a tool that you would want to consider. So I definitely want to highlight it here because while it's not you just doing it, you're now using your employees to become brand advocates and to advertise maybe content. And that could be your own content, but it also could be just other content that you find on LinkedIn. And it's like, hey, this is about our industry. Why don't you post this and help your employees sort of build their own brand as thought leaders in a specific place and domain. Finally, we have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a great tool if you are really going to mine LinkedIn. It is kind of like a CRM for LinkedIn, but it also integrates with CRMs. It integrates with HubSpot and Salesforce. So it can pull that data, find those people. You can identify people. You can create lists of leads that you want to do. You can message people very directly. It does cost $65 per month if build annually, but it is a really efficient way. If you're going to be doing a lot of working with people, you can basically do unlimited searches on LinkedIn, which isn't a case for free. I don't know if anyone's ever found this out, but you don't have unlimited searches with the free account. You can search for target audiences. They have advanced filters that are not available in anywhere else within the LinkedIn things. There are some sales leads. And I have a link to the advanced filtering so you can look at what those are. People, you can get alerts saying, oh, someone's changing jobs. You can get an alert if somebody mentions a specific keyword. So if somebody just puts it into their post, it'll let you know someone just mentioned that keyword, and you can then go and talk to them or engage with them. So it's a really sort of a big engagement and sales tool. So yes. So dynamic ads are more expensive than the other ones. Yes. And how many email does LinkedIn allow to send? It depends on your target audience. So LinkedIn will tell you how many people match your audience, and then you can decide how many emails you want to send based on your budget and how many people fit your particular criteria. So next steps, getting there. Keywords are key. Keywords are key for your website. Keywords are key for your landing pages. Keywords are key for what are you going to bid on. Keywords are key for LinkedIn. What is it you want people to know you, right? So make sure you understand your keywords and those phrases and that they're in your ads and on your landing pages. Remember, landing page experience, once people click, has to also be quite high. It's not just about getting them to click on your ads. It's about getting them to stay. If they go back to Google really quickly, immediately, Google starts dropping your quality score. Use those customer personas. Now you have target audiences. Use that information to find those people on LinkedIn and use that a lot in the ads that you do. Know your budget. So be careful. You can spend a lot of money. Digital is cheaper for sure, but it can add up very quickly if you're spending a lot on a daily basis. So know how much you're willing to spend. Craft compelling ads with tangible benefits. And I want to talk about stay away from features. What are the benefits that you are going to deliver to your target audience, to your customers? What is it they're going to get? Because that's what I'm going to click on. I don't care about a feature. I may not even understand how a feature is good for me. And then what we're going to do is review all of these additional resources that I have over the next several slides. So basically, I have here quite a few articles around pay-per-click. I have some courses that you can take. I also have lots of things around Google Ads, as well as LinkedIn, as well as third-party tools that you can use for LinkedIn. So there are some things that you might want to use for LinkedIn that are great third-party tools that won't get you banned. That's also important. Again, these are the LinkedIn third-party tools. And then I have a bunch of average industry click-through rates for various industries, cost per clicks based on industries, conversion rates so that you can know what's happening on search versus Google display networks, and cost per action rates as well. So you have some benchmarks to get started. So with that, I will stop now. And I thank those of you who stuck around for sticking around. Hopefully that has given you a lot of information and a start to paid advertising. And now you can maybe go to LinkedIn or go to Google Ads and start sleuthing around and figuring out how you can reach the markets that you want. So there you go. Thank you everyone for listening. I know I've gone over again, but hopefully it was well worth it. So thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. You were on time. I talked too much at the beginning.
That's okay. Yes, and Liz, can you just put the presentation in the chat one more last time? So if anyone hasn't downloaded it, they can download it at this point as well. So there you go.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Hopefully we'll
Thank
see you
you.
again next week. If anyone has one last quick question, feel free to ask it. I think we'll stay.
Yes, I'll stay around. If you have a last question, I'm more than doing that.
And otherwise, have a
Awesome.
great evening. We'll see you next week.
Yes. Thank you.